Troubleshooting your computer. This is the next section in the course on Intro to Computing. As you know, you're going to find that there's just going to be some times when your computer is not going to be cooperating. It's going to have problems and issues. And so the idea of troubleshooting is something that even you and I have to get our arms around and try to figure out what that means, and maybe even be somewhat of a technician when it comes to troubleshooting our own computer. This is not an easy thing at all at times, but there are some things that you can grasp about it that will help you to do some initial diagnosis and get some ideas as to how to fix your computer. One of the big issues, of course, the one that's on the top with troubleshooting, is issues that have to do with heat. This is a primary concern when it comes to electrical components that are inside your computer. They have to have a way to get rid of the heat. The heat can't build up. If it gets too hot, the computer is not going to work very well at all. This is why a processor, a CPU, central processing unit, often has what's called a heat sink on top of it, and that is to dispense the heat in such a way that it doesn't concentrate on the processor itself. It has been conducted into the heat sink that often looks like it's aluminum. Often it's in silver in color, but it conducts the heat, and it looks like some kind of heater itself, because it has ways for the air to be around the coils, so that the heat can be dissipated away from the processor. As I mentioned before, if you're into gaming, which requires a lot of processing, you'll find that they have fluids that they use in coolant systems that they use in addition to fans and heat sinks, because of the issue with heat that accumulates from the intense processing that goes on in a game. So when you look at troubleshooting, you have to begin by asking the question, is there too much heat? Is there not enough circulation of air? If you've been to some big buildings that have lots of computers in them, especially if you've been in server rooms with rack servers that are on racks, several servers are on one rack, and you'll have like 5, 6, 7 servers on one rack, and you have multiple racks, so you can have 25 servers on 5 different racks, for example. Then you've got a heat issue. You've got to have air conditioning and coolant systems that will keep those rack servers cool, because a lot of times those rack servers will have more than one processor running on them, and as many as 32 processors on one server running can accumulate a lot of heat, and it can become very difficult for the machinery to sustain its output under those conditions. So heat is a big issue, and you'll find that I address that in the lecture material. Also, you have to look at things to do with the fact that the computer can turn off without warning. That's definitely a heat-related issue if it does. But it can also be a hardware issue, an error that occurs with hardware. Sometimes hardware just breaks down. Your hard drive can break. Your processor can burn out, literally. There's other components on the motherboard that we looked at earlier in our course, and again, I have one. Any of these components on the motherboard, that are sensitive to heat, and they can burn out. These little round things like up here at the top, these round things here that look like silos. If I turned it on its side, you could see that it's more or less like a silo looking, but they have silver, uh, round circular silver looking ends on them. These are capacitors, and these capacitors can burn out too. So you've got an issue with heat no matter which way you look at components in a computer. All of this has to be kept cool. Everything to do with the processor, which is right here, which fits right there, to any of these other integrated circuits that you see on the device, like this black one here, this charcoal looking one. That is an integrated circuit too, and there's very small components too that can easily burn out on this motherboard. So that you know, there's also the fact that this is not a high voltage situation at all. So you have to be aware of the fact that your computer at the motherboard level is using only very low voltage, not more than 3 volts. And you cannot sustain high voltage conditions. The amount of voltage coming out of your outlet and your wall is too much for the computer, and it has to be brought down to a voltage level that the computer can deal with. So it's all low voltage. That's why if you have, for example, you live in an area where there's lots of thunderstorms and you have lots of lightning, then you can have spikes in your electricity and it can burn out. So I want you to be aware of the fact that heat is very much of an issue, but electricity is also. The fact that your electricity can have spikes in it, or it can have changes in its voltage or other properties that will damage the computer. There's another issue with troubleshooting that's very common, that causes computer problems, that causes the computer to shut down and maybe act strangely or erratically, and that is computer viruses. We're going to talk more about viruses in our section on security and ethics. But viruses are not uncommon now. They are very common, and they are very prevalent when it comes to surfing on the net. So you can just about count on getting at least one virus, if not several viruses, before you are through with computing. It's not unusual for a virus to simply make your computer turn off or make it impossible for you to actually turn it back on. It has infected some part of your machine, and it could be at the boot sector level, where we're going to learn about the boot process toward the end of our course, but a boot sector virus will infect the boot sector where your boot process is for starting your machine. So this could be an issue. This could be a problem. Another thing about troubleshooting is issues with the operating system itself. The operating system can, in essence, break down. It can need to be reinstalled. It can get corrupted, is another way of putting it. Again, you can have a virus that infects the operating system at the kernel level, and that's Kernel. I spelled it before as Kernal, and that referred to Commodore, the old Commodore computer's operating system. But all of them now are referred to as Kernel, kernel. And at this level, you can have an infection of a virus that will bring your system into erratic behavior, or won't work properly, or establishes something known as a backdoor. And we'll talk about that in the module to come on security and ethics. Another problem is that you have other kinds of hardware failure. Again, you can see this happen with other things that are attached to your computer. When they fail, sometimes that will infect the computer in the sense that the driver fails, which is in the operating system, and that can cause interference with the rest of your machine. The troubleshooting is really related to looking at different ways in which the computer can be affected. There's external things like heat, moisture, for example, changes in humidity. You can have too much humidity, in other words, the air can be too wet, or you can have too little humidity, and then you're going to have a static electricity problem. You can have too much heat. You don't have enough way for the heat, enough of a way for the heat to dissipate itself. So that's an issue. So you have to, you can't just have your computer in the hot sun all the time. That's not a good idea. Don't leave it in the back seat of your car in the hot sun in the summertime. That's not a good way to treat your computer. And then there's also things to do with particles and dust that accumulates on the motherboard inside a computer case. These can cause problems. You can open the computer case and you can discharge static electricity onto the components. It'll leave your body and go into the components, and that can damage components or little integrated circuitry on the motherboard. Uh, and other things that happen, dropping the computer, banging, setting something heavy on the monitor on top of your laptop can be a problem. There's a converter, a graphics converter, down at the bottom of the monitor across the top of the keyboard area with your laptop that's attached to the monitor, and that converter can come loose or something can go wrong with it, and then your monitor is affected with lots of lines and colors, just running across the screen in front of you and jumping up and down, and you can't have your monitor that way and be able to work with it effectively. So there's all kinds of things that can happen. And the best thing to do with this is to have a good relationship with a technical person at a tech shop, a computer store, or perhaps at your place of work, so that if these little items happen, you can keep him or her informed about what's going on, and he can help you to stay out of trouble and maybe even prevent things from happening with your computer as you try to accomplish your work and the tasks that you want to complete. So this is the idea behind troubleshooting. It is part of the landscape of computing. Your computer is not going to work all the time due to conditions around it, and it might just be too hot, or due to conditions inside of it. Something is broken, something has come apart or been burned, or the capacitor has burned up. Something has taken place inside, a hardware failure, something is just broken down, or some kind of software is there, like a virus, and it has taken over your system in some way so that you are unable to use the computer properly. So keep this in mind as you continue to work with computing. You don't have to become a technician again, but you can learn technical things about your computer that will help you to keep it running properly. Again, don't store it in sunlight. Don't throw it on the ground. It's not a tough book. If you don't have a tough book, don't throw it down the staircase or the stairway. Any of those kinds of things. Don't do it anyways, because the device is overall a sensitive device, and when you have thunderstorms and things, you have to have these devices that protect the computer from the electricity coming in on the wires, and it, just it can burn up your system just as easily as can be. So you need a surge protector that will help you to prevent anything like that happening with your instruments. So thank you again for your attention, and we'll talk to you soon.